Hi, and welcome to the first episode of Periodic Sharing. Before we get started, let's answer the burning question on everyone's mind. What is periodic sharing? We want to encourage learning with love because we don't always have the information needed to form opinions on things. Here, we feel that ignorance is not a bad thing. In fact, I found that only when we embrace our ignorance do we create space to learn and grow. So, in this series, I attempted to create a candid environment so people can share their personal experiences. And of course, with a ton of intersectional feminism. So, that's why we're called periodic sharing information periodically and hopefully helping you shed some old opinions on the way. And not a bad pun, in my opinion. So, let's jump in. Are you guys ready to get started on our very first episode? I am Srujani and this is Apurva and Ramona, very wonderful women joining me today, and we're going to talk about first generation assimilation. We're all women from India, moved to the United States, and we live here now and work here. And we felt like it was an important topic to talk about because we wanted to share our experience of moving away from our home country and making a life in a new country. A lot of people, I feel like it'll help understand what it's like for first generation immigrants in this day and age, because a lot of times we hear stories of what it's been like through second generation children of immigrants, and this is usually a generation ago, like in the 70s or 80s, but things are different now. Some of the similarities are similar, but some things are different, and it's best to hear it from the horse's mouth. So let's start with a round of introductions.
Sure. I'm Apurva and I'm in Pittsburgh right now, and I moved to the States like 3 years ago. I already have a master's degree in computer science, and I was also a professional dancer. So I was looking for something where I can combine both of them. My main motivation was to give myself an opportunity to see things beyond what I just saw. I wanted to get out of my house, get out of my comfort zone, and also mainly aim for a career that is more me than just wanting to do something that was just for the sake of being secure or having some income. I was like, no, we don't have to suffer every day just because we have to have some money. We can also enjoy what we do every day. And I spend so much time anyway doing it in my life that I want to make it more me. The US turned out to be the place which had one of these very unique courses. So now I'm a game designer, so it's more than dance and tech, it's entertainment and tech.
Yeah. Hello everyone. I just wanted to do that. I'm Ramona Arora, and I'm currently based in San Francisco, California. I moved to the US about 2 years ago to explore something beyond what was normalized at that point. It's like, I don't think I ever heard about pivoting your career or, moving into another direction. Psychology has been an interest for a while. Not much of a coder. What do I really do? It was a blockage, and I was like, let's just explore. Let's move to the US and see what happens. And it was definitely a great decision because I like analytics, and that's how I explored it. Still exploring a lot of different fields and learning about new things. So it was definitely stepping out of my comfort zone situation, but a good situation.
That's awesome. I think that's definitely a theme for us, is stepping out of comfort zone, but also for a good situation and new opportunities and exploring a new land. For myself, I think it's a combination of the stories that you guys have just said. I also came to the United States 3 years ago to do the same program that Apurva did, and I landed up there because I've been in the animation industry before and I really liked it, but I was looking for kind of a new role within that industry. So animation, graphics, and film, VFX, all of that was of great interest to me. So I wanted to explore something new and not be a technical person that comes in, that which was my earlier role, and go more into the design aspect or the thinking aspect of it, which is why I'm able to do a combination of that as a product manager now for a 3D product. So, and at the same time, I definitely wanted a change of pace from the city that I was living in. I was living in Bangalore. And so there was enough of traffic that we saw, I think. And it was a big shock to come see like no vehicles in Pittsburgh, where we moved to. It's a very slow city, but it's a beautiful city. So my first question on that note is like, what was moving like for you guys? What was the first big impression for you? Something that stuck out between the United States and India?
I think for me, so I was like very used to staying with my parents. I was pretty dependent on them for like just like basic necessities. Like I didn't have to really explicitly worry about it. But when I moved here, it was very overwhelming because I was just like, can I just get milk? There are like so many types of milks. 2% skinny, skimmed, full fat, half and half. I was like, what is half and half? And then there is organic section. It was just an aisle full of milk, and I was just like, wait, like I just wanted milk. I have no idea. And it's just like with milk specifically, my journey has been like super exploratory because now I like then my stomach started having problems because most of the milk here is processed and it's different from what I used to get in India or I'm used to having. So it just took me so much time to even buy basic groceries, just to even manage like my everyday work and everyday eating habits from a household where I didn't have to worry about it at all to a place where everything was new and everything was so much. It was too much in my face. There was so much bread. I didn't understand what, and everything had a calorie count, and I was just like, oh. So it took me so much time to just be okay with understanding how to go to a grocery store. I think that has been the biggest change, especially from perspective of somebody who never did any of this and did not have to worry about it on a daily basis.
That makes a lot of sense. And I love to tack on to that grocery shopping part with my experience with cereal because for me it was an aisle full of cereal and the only cereal I ever had was cornflakes and maybe Chocos. Those are two kind of cereal that we had in India. And then here there's like Reese's Puffs and I just like lost my shit. When I saw it, I was like, there's like candy, but you can eat it as cereal. And I didn't do the thing where I looked at the calories. So I definitely struggled with sudden weight gain and sudden sugar consumption, which my body wasn't happy with. And I wasn't aware of it at the time that processed sugar is a concern because generally in our diet back in India, it was not something that we worried about. So our body suddenly has this shock of incoming processed sugar that we didn't know how to avoid or read about. And just to keep a good diet going was definitely hard. Because of the sudden weight gain, it was also hormonal changes, which I've heard that a lot of people have gone through when they move to the States, just because of the food being different. And it's so basic that it goes to show how much, like, even your day-to-day life that we take for granted becomes a big thing to get used to.
Something that I actually initially noticed the most was the level of intrusion and how that changed when I moved to the US. I always felt like, is anyone around me going to care about, what time am I coming home? Are the neighbors really going to be very concerned about who's coming into our home? And it was something that just came from India. I've lived in India by myself as well. It's just if you live in an apartment complex, the issues that I had as a, bachelor living in India was what time are you coming home? And if after 9, no guys are allowed into your house. And, I'm like, I come from a family or like from a background where I've always had guy friends. Like either don't send me to an engineering college where the majority is men and the possibility of finding women is anyway very less. So, I just had that option of, always, having friends over at home. And then, there would be someone downstairs, a guard, actually recording at what point the man is leaving from the house. And if he's not leaving at certain points, you'll also find like the landlord will just be like in the elevator and like before 1 minute notice will just let you know that, oh, I'm on my way to, your house. And literally the bell rings. And it's normalized over there because your society or the people that are living in your neighborhood care more about your business than you yourself. Like, it's like it's a lot about shaming. It's not even about caring about your safety. Is like it's an opportunity to shame someone that, you're a woman, you're not, why is a man coming into your house? Is he only coming to do this business? Like when I say business, you probably know what I'm talking about. And that's the thing is like, even if he is, why is it your problem? So I honestly felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders that I don't have to go around, proving myself to people, or why is it something that I should be doing anyway? I back in Bangalore had to move to another apartment, which is way more shittier than my first apartment because I was like, over here, nobody cares. Like, our landlord and everyone had told her, like, do whatever you want, we don't care. And I was like, nice, but there's no electricity for 7 hours in a day. Thank you so much. So, this is what I get for, accepting a free life. So definitely, I feel like the level of intrusion changed. And in some ways, it's funny how if you flip it, the level of communication also changed. Like, back in India, if I'm walking on the street and a stranger smiles at me, I'll be like, what a creep. I mean, a male stranger especially. Whereas in the US, it's so normalized that someone's talking to you. And is like probably smiling at you and just saying what's up and just going beside you, just walking by, and I'm like, why are people smiling back? They're gonna follow you, don't smile back. And now I'm used to that culture. Now I talk to people on streets and it's pretty normal. So yeah, it's pretty funny how the level of intrusion and communication is in some ways flipped.
That makes so much sense. And I think that aspect of keeping your guard up when you're out in public in India has definitely changed for me, where I had usually this four eyes around my head that's always looking at like who's staring at me, who's walking too close. Is this person been around me for quite some time? If even if I'm standing at a bus stop, just seeing if someone's inching closer or like if they're acting shifty basically. And it's something that I know that is a pretty much universal experience for a lot of women. But I think for me personally, it was drastically reduced how much I have to do that when I moved to the States. Maybe it's also a matter of population density at the end of the day. It definitely feels like my day to day is much less about thinking about who's walking around me, but like just actually starting to think about my day, think about what I'm doing, and think about my own life rather than think about everyone around me. So that level of keeping my guard up and being hyper aware has reduced. And this whole aspect of having your own privacy in the place you live, I've definitely heard stories of that. Houses that you would find that said no men allowed. So like you just don't have an option, even if it's your own colleagues or anyone, like you just want to invite people to your house, whether or not it's men. And like Ramona said, you go to an engineering college, you'll have a lot of male friends. You work in tech, you will have male friends. So that's definitely going to happen. But yeah, the idea being that you should just be able to go about your life and not worry about how people are perceiving that life. And I think you get an aspect of that in India where you're put under scrutiny of like who's coming in and how long are they staying. And it's a very intrusive culture.
And I feel like the part that which really like just hit me right now, Sujani, is that we're justifying it even now though. We're justifying it by saying we went to engineering college. But why do we need that justification? I just realized I actually do say that, but I shouldn't be giving a justification for having a friend who's why should I be looking at their gender at all? Like, why should that be a criteria in any way?
There is no need for like that second layer of explanation of why we have male friends. And that's great that you recognized it. I have a friend who was living with her roommates in Hyderabad, and she did invite a couple of friends over for like 5 minutes while they changed so they could all go out for dinner, and she happened to live close to work. And that night ended with her talking to the cops because her society called on the cops saying that she has men. Like, I don't even know what they were trying to quote unquote charge her with. And I don't know how like it's okay for cops to just show up because some men entered some woman's house and that was cause enough for them to actually perform this duty with taxpayer money. But it's unfortunate because there's this aspect of shaming of sex workers that's deep-seated hatred for that and deep-seated negative perception of sex workers that kind of mixes into this. And then there is this vilifying of women in general and saying, oh, you must be a sex worker and we hate sex workers. Like, it doesn't make sense. It does make sense in a way that people just want to vilify women. And so how would that actually pan out over here? Like, I can't ever imagine having a couple of male friends over for a period of 15 minutes turning into a night where I have to talk to the cops and explain to them why I have men in my house. Talking to the cops, like, can you imagine someone calling 911 on you if you have men in your house? It's like, it's ridiculous. But yeah, just another experience that it's not my first-hand experience, but common experience that my friend has had, and she's probably one of many that have had to go through this. Definitely the part of letting my guard down a little more, having comfort using public transport and not worrying about my Uber driver taking the wrong direction. And again, not to say that it doesn't happen in other places, but statistically speaking, it's lesser here.
I think one of the culture shocks, not culture shock, but I was so happy to see women drivers and women Uber drivers and women bus drivers, which I never see in India. And I was just like, as a society, we've never even graduated to that level to even having some of them. And we have some which celebrated, but here it's just such a norm that there are so many women drivers here, and it's a really liberating thing to see. Definitely makes me feel like it's possible. Just seeing women drivers, even late in the night when I had to go back and forth from my university and stuff like that, made me feel like, oh, the safety level is already much better than where I used to be. In whatever level, maybe it's not the most ideal, but it's great in my life to be able to just see this kind of a place that allows women to do that.
It was very interesting you said the word possible. You said, oh, I realized that it was possible. And I think that's a key word, because I think I agree that growing up in India, you almost feel like it's impossible. Like, you just feel like that's the norm, that you can't leave the house after a certain time. You can't do certain professions. It's just how it's going to be because of how the world is. And the fact that you come here and you witness it happening and you say, oh, you know what, that's not true. Like, it can be possible. And when we say women drivers, we mean women drivers of public transport and Uber and auto rickshaws and such. So I think it's really interesting to see that the things that we take for granted are not possible for women. Suddenly, those kind of beliefs are shattered when you come here and you witness it being very much normal to do so. Very much normal to wear short clothes wherever you go and not have to worry about it. And I think that was one interesting thing for me, was when I would go to work, I've definitely experienced having to think about what I wear, and someone who came to me and said, I like your dress, I have a similar one, but I don't think I'd ever wear it to work. And it's like, in one sentence, sums up so many things. Because I did feel uncomfortable that day, not because of the woman who told me that, but because of the man who stared at me that day at work. The next day, I picked out a dress and then I put it back. And I was like, no, that's like a little too... So I'm not going to wear that. And that day I decided, okay, this is not what I want my life to be, to every morning think about what I'm going to wear to work. Because a workplace is usually the more safe place that you work. Like, you go through all the public transport or whatever, but then you show up at your workplace and you're there for 8 hours and you want to feel safe for 8 hours a day. And if I'm not going to feel that because of the clothes I'm wearing, I don't want to have that as part of my life. So one of the reasons I made the big decision to move at the time was because I wasn't happy at the job I was, and I wasn't feeling comfortable. It was a very great opportunity of a job. I was getting a really good movie to work with, but I didn't feel comfortable being there on a day-to-day basis. And of course, the other aspect was I didn't want to be a programmer anymore. But I do see myself having programmed for another year or so if I felt comfortable to do so. Bringing it back to assimilation, I think, or just like existing in the US, is a mighty amount of paperwork for me. It's always staying on top of where I am, what my paperwork says. Like, I'm moving at the end of this month, so I have to go update a bunch of websites. And as Indians, we don't quickly get permanent residency. I think it takes over 10 years. And in that process, you're just like stuck in this limbo of are you a permanent resident because you've been living here for 10 years? That's pretty much permanent. And it's very unfortunate that a lot of people that I know here that have lived for 5 to 10 years, that have family and kids here. For example, my sister just had a baby, but at any given point, she could be asked to like pack up and leave, uproot her life, and that's kind of a scary thought. And at the same time, for someone like me, I'm on my H-1B. I try to not get attached to where I live, try to just enjoy the fact that I'm living here for now and not completely feel like I live here, because I don't know what the future holds. And there's a lot of paperwork to just continue to live here. Then there's this aspect of people saying, oh, congratulations, you got your H-1B. And I feel like I'm told like I'm taking it for granted or being a little too ungrateful for having my H-1B. But last year when I got it, or when I was at least picked to be considered for H-1B, I got to know like a day before I was leaving for a conference in the UK. And what that meant was just 3 hours before my flight, before I was supposed to get on my flight, I had to cancel these tickets for this conference that I was looking forward to all year. And I had booked flights and non-refundable flights and non-refundable hotels, and I lost a lot of that money. And a lot of people at the time told me, oh, but you're so lucky you got your H-1B. All this in the long term will not feel like a lot of money. And unfortunately, it's true. It is right, but it's unfortunate that it is right. You are valuing some amount of paperwork over an actual real world experience that you wanted to have. It was a conference that I wanted to learn a lot from, and I feel like it would have been very important for me. But I will admit that a lot of people stepped up at my workplace and helped me out and reimbursed me some of the money that I had spent, but I didn't go, and they were really nice about it. They knew that paperwork and these kind of things happen. So while I have that kind of love and acceptance here, it still kind of sucks to be always worried about your paperwork. My cousin did not leave the US for 6 years for many different reasons, like she was moving jobs, and so she wanted to make sure her paperwork is right. So there's always these few phases in your paperwork life that you're advised not to leave the country. So she had all these important phases in her paperwork during important phases in her family's life, in her life. So she missed her own sister's wedding in India because she was having some paperwork issues. And that's a huge trade-off. Not being able to go to your own sister's wedding because you want to be able to continue living.
Yeah, and not to mention the amount of times they change policies and change rules. Like that is also extremely anxiety inducing, that things change so quickly depending on administration, and you just have to roll with it. You don't know what is the next rule that will change, and you don't know how much time you have before you have to apply to the next one. So many companies straight up reject your application if you say, yes, I want sponsorship, because they're not in a position to sponsor or they don't want to. There are lots of industries there are big companies which say, nope, not happening except for really few people. So there are lots of all of these constraints, and just in a flip way of looking at it, in a very weird way, I feel like it's just made me more focused on my job more than anything. Like everything else, my relationship, everything takes a backseat, because I look at it when I'm really anxious, is that it's at least keeping me very focused on one thing. My career comes first before anything else, for more reasons than one. Is at least keeps me going a little bit. Doesn't mean that it's okay to have the process the way it is. Definitely not. It can be improved in so many ways, made efficient in many ways, I'm sure. But I don't understand why, even after so many years, it hasn't been made so. I also find it interesting that so many of my colleagues who are citizens here don't know, are not aware of the fact that we have to go through so much. I think even in our workplace, sometimes even the designated person who needs to know these things doesn't know the whole detail. And that really amazes me. And so sometimes I do take, sometimes when we are chatting, I take these chances to tell them, hey, these are the things that happens. And they're like, what? I had no idea you couldn't have an internship. Oh, what? I didn't know this. So I think the overall knowledge when it comes to, even though your company has so many immigrants, just this knowledge about the process, I feel is limited among the people who are from here. And I think a lot of empathy can grow if people can know that all of this stuff needs to go behind having to stay here. So I really wish and hope that through our conversations, even people who are citizens who are unaware of the difficulties we go through, understand and just are aware that, okay, these are the things that they have to fight for. That's something that they never have to think about in their life. Yeah.
There's 2 points that you mentioned that are so important. One is the anxiety inducing aspect. There's a lot of mental health investment that goes into just continuing to be an immigrant here, just existing here. There's a lot of mental health work that goes into it, especially with changing policies. I also, like, every once in 2 months, I attend a webinar at work where they say, here's what's changed and how are you affected and whatnot. And especially workplaces that don't have like a huge legal team to do that, it's going to be hard for them to provide the same kind of resources for their employees who are not citizens. And I feel like for me, there's a lot of anxiety of also losing friends to visa status. I feel very anxious that, Purva might not be here next year, or like, some other friends who are still waiting for their H-1B, they're just not going to be here. And it's scary to think about, to just lose friends to simple stuff like paperwork, or like luck. Actually lose friends to luck, because they have the talent, they have the paperwork, they are legal immigrants, but they're not lucky for 3 years in a row, so their application doesn't get picked up. And it's not as easy as like, yes, you get to stay, yes, no, you don't. When we are staying here for a year, for 2 years, for 5 years, we make a life here, we make friends here, we make connections here that we completely sever when we are leaving. We just completely cut them off, and we have to up and leave. And that's not easy for people leaving. That's not easy for people staying back. And the interesting part you mentioned was companies rejecting you based on visa as well. And that was a very interesting thing for me when I was looking for jobs. At job fair, the booths would just say US citizens only, or no visa sponsoring. And it really stuck with me. I was like, but I'm just at least in the school that we are classmates at, I am just as talented as my classmate who just happens to have been born in a different country. And how are you calling yourself an equal opportunity employer if you're straight up saying no based on my nationality? Like, the thing actually says we don't discriminate based on nationality, race, or ethnicity. And I'm like, when you say no visa sponsoring, or when you say US citizens only, you are discriminating based on nationality. So I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but that's what it feels like.
$4,000 for each applicant for H-1B is the current rate. I don't know how much that will change. It's not that it's an easy one paperwork filling out for the employer either. I think they also get scared because it costs this much money. And I'm like, why does it cost this money? If I get rejected, there is nothing. There's no refund based on it. Like all of this cost also gets added up, is why, some companies get scared and they're like, oh no, like we don't want to sponsor your visa. And I'm like, okay, that also is nothing I can control. Like, what can I possibly do about it? Yeah, it's frustrating for sure.
In some ways, it's like, you're getting freedom, but you're giving back the freedom. So you keep going back and forth through those points, but you're still like, okay, no, it's still fine or better here. It's like, so which freedom is actually better? It's always so confusing when I think about this or self-reflect. Is like, if I'm ever frustrated about something to do with traveling, especially, as someone who loves traveling, I often have to think 100 times before, even making a plan. First of all, the plan is probably not going to be successful, and I already know it, but I still spend a lot of time researching and trying to figure out if this plan worked out for anyone else, if I can still do something about it. And then if I crib about it, I feel like there are these voices that are telling me that, suck it up. You're getting this life, so suck it up. And I feel like, why isn't it normalized to be wanting more? Like, one hand, you're saying this is an American dream, the same hand that you're hearing about American Dream, you're also hearing about how immigrants just come up and are taking your jobs. So let's like talk about that mental stress also. Is like, it's not welcoming as such. We're getting the freedom that everyone else is getting in the sense of, being out there. Individualistic freedom does exist, but there's this whole pressure of being an immigrant, which is sort of challenging, obviously. It's like you have to put aside those things which people are like, I can just go ahead and do this tomorrow. I can fly to Europe and enjoy my spring break. And I'm like, so lucky. I have to get this
I've definitely
paperwork.
seen I've seen dating profiles that say most spontaneous thing that I ever done. Decided to go to Europe overnight, and I'm like, no, it's not spontaneous. You just have a nice passport. I would do that if I could. I need to plan 3 months in advance if I want to go to Spain.
I know that's what I'm saying. Like, honestly, couldn't even do this in India, but at least didn't have to worry so much about entering back into India. I think for me, before even planning a trip, it's like, how do I be completely prepared to enter back the US and talk to the immigration officers? Definitely not the best conversation, the most hurtful conversation every time. Even though nobody's breaking up with me, I just feel like someone is about to. So it's like a thin line. I'm like, let me just go. We can do this. We can survive another year. Let's make this happen. But it's definitely one of those situations where I feel like there are people always cursing immigrants. We're just here for opportunity. We've done hard work. We're doing hard work. So yeah, there's definitely that challenge, and I can talk about that challenge forever. It's just one of the things that really strikes to me is like, please like normalize it. Don't shut someone's feeling when they want to be doing way more, but they're keeping those dreams aside. And I think this is a generational thing. Is like it's even come here in the US as a generational thing of like accepting what you have because you could have had it worse. I'm like not sure how
Yeah,
that works.
we are definitely told to keep your head down and accept the fact that you're getting all these opportunities and not get in the way of things, and someone's being rude to you, you just don't speak back to them because you don't want to be labeled as like a hysterical immigrant. You don't want to spoil the name for immigrants more than it already is, I guess. So there's definitely that aspect of accepting what is given to you and not asking for more. I think that does come from people from our earlier generation, our parents, or people who have been here before, kind of. That's the strategy they use that helped them survive. So it makes sense that they suggest that. And while I understand the overall problem that these particular jobs are causing to just general economy or the people, there's always going to be this aspect of like, as individuals, we're not perpetrating any of this. As individuals, like, I wasn't aware of this when I came to work here. I wasn't aware that just me wanting to work on animated movies is going to make it difficult for someone else.
One thing that has helped me professionally is being able to voice my own opinion and say at times that I don't know. For some reason, I haven't. Maybe it's also the nature of the industry or just like the places that I worked in, so it could be subjective. But I've never in my life have I felt comfortable saying I don't know this. I will get back to you on this, or saying, hey, I am not comfortable working more than this. Is there a way that we can do something around it? That has never happened to me. Somewhere it's always assumed that you have to be able to work how many ever hours, which also may be the case in many industries, even here. But for me personally, that was a huge change to be able to be like, oh, it's okay, I can voice my opinion. People do take it seriously because there is less noise in general. All of these things are making me think about myself more. So I think professionally also I'm able to represent who I am and actually find who I am much easily than I did in India, because there's not much of this noise happening around me, which is like, you are supposed to do this, you're supposed to do this. There's nobody to tell me anything here. So I just feel like, oh, I can actually be more myself. So I think that's definitely one thing that's helped.
That's amazing. I think that's so true that you finally start kind of hearing your own thoughts and you're not busy processing other people's thoughts or things people are saying. So, any last thoughts before I wrap things up?
There will be struggles nonetheless. it's better to look at the silver lining every night before you sleep. Like literally, that's what I tell myself. Is like you need to focus on the silver lining because you can be a very negative person or you will become a negative person because of the processes here. But you need to find something that will make you happy regardless of everything that's happening. Like find inner happiness or find some sort of a stability that's not even attached to the US that will always make you feel like, okay, at least I have this to fall back on. And to be honest, for me, that was my education and knowledge. I think it took me time to realize that I actually have quite a bit of it, which a lot of people don't. So just because I don't get accepted in a country does not mean I'm disappointing my relatives, my parents, I'm disappointing this whole culture aspect or just myself. I feel like I'm way more than any country's acceptance. And you need to kind of find a way to accept that. And you need to find people that you can vent to because it's a hard journey. So find people to vent to and like live the experience as much as you can. Like just live it up.
Yeah, I think having a good support system has helped me the most. I think I don't know what I am without it. I really need a good support system. Me having my friends, even though they're halfway across the country, because you don't have family here, so you kind of have to make your own, even if it's in a way that you are in a relationships that's healthy and supportive, and or friendships which allows you to vent and is healthy for you guys. I think that's the only. Honestly, I think even if I leave the country, I think, of course, other than the fact that I had a really amazing education plus really nice work experience, I think personally I would take away the friends that I made here because they become more special than they were back in India because this is like you're having similar struggles and that you're facing things alone but kind of with each other. So yeah, that's where it's good to talk about these things even to your friends. Like we three are friends, we speak about it off podcast as well, and that's how we came about having this comfort level to talk. So if it's extremely important to have your own support system, just have friends around, and that's all you need sometimes.
I couldn't have said it better myself. There's definitely a mental health effort that is very real, and it really helps to have friends that you can talk to. And that's kind of why we started this podcast to talk about things more openly and candidly in this space so people can relate to it. And that's a wrap on our very first episode. Thank you so much, Apurva. Thank you so much, Ramona. And thank you to everyone who's listening who made it this far with us. Thank you for being here. You can check us out on Instagram at Periodic Shedding and let us know what you think. We are new and we're looking for constructive feedback and suggestions. Talk to you soon.